the guy in the hijack's a big action player, recreational action player, opens a lot of hands, doesn't fold much. So, obviously that kind of starts the cascade. He opens to 20, and he's probably opening 20% of his hands, 30% of his hands for a raise.
Okay.
So, at least that. So the Button is a player that's been around recently. I don't know him real well, but he's a younger Asian, younger kid. And I just noticed that he's been really loose pre-flop. When he's in a pot, he likes to see a flop. He can read a little bit the board, but he's also got plenty of bluffs. And I've seen him kind of getting some weird spots where I was like, what the heck did he have? So, I had him kind of pegged as definitely going to be on the lighter side at times, but also able to read the board. So he 3-bets on the Button to 65.
Okay.
So, he's raising the loose player. I mean, obviously you could have a hand as well, but he also could be on the lighter side here. So I'm in the small blind with 2 black jacks.
Okay. So you're in a little bit of a quandary here, right? I mean, you don't want to just call, right? Right.
I don't want a flat call. I don't want to fold.
Right. Although I will say, you know what's interesting here, Andrew, is that I was watching some high stakes poker, which is the new season, right? The new season, which is on Poker Go, and that I'm involved with the Poker King, doing some consulting for them. So I actually might do some hand review type videos for the Poker King YouTube channel, so everybody can sort of look out for that. I'm not 100% on that, but Poker King can use the footage, right? And one of the hands that I saw was that there was a hand where Tom Dwan, this was from the last episode, he played some like 2006 bullshit like 3-bet with 10-6 of spades from the small blind, and Nick Petrangelo flat called 3-bets with ace-jack suited in the big blind, and then the opener, who just had garbage, actually 4-bet. But the reason why I bring that up is because a guy like Nick Petrangelo, one of the best players in the world, at least for tournaments, and obviously he's very kind of a GTO guy, did flat call 3-bets. Now I'm not saying I would do that in your spot, but some players will do it occasionally. But I'm assuming you 4-bet.
Yeah, I 4-bet, but there is some benefit to, I think, calling. And I think the original raiser, he's got a high raising range, but not a huge 4-betting range. So he's just gonna, he's gonna call almost always if I call. So it isn't the worst to play jacks 3 ways that position, but it's not the greatest situation. I just figure I have the best hand here a lot. And, I can navigate if I get called twice or, if the Button call or, whatever. I just like 4-betting better in this spot. But I'm in at 240, which is pretty big. It's about 4x. Thinking that, I'll probably end up heads up with one of the two. But if they both fold, it ain't the end of the world either. So that was kind of my thought. Is that a little too big for you? Or is that...
Well, people gone back and forth with cold 4-bet sizing, especially from out of position. I mean, I remember asking some of our top section guys, Ping and Brian, in a given scenario, this is 2-5, so you're 300 big blinds plus, because everyone can be a default monkey. Oh, 2.2. You're supposed to 2.2 4-bet, like, 20 to 65 to like 150. I don't buy that in this scenario. I think I would make it at least 200. Going up to 4x probably is a little bit on the larger side because of your positional disadvantage. One of the things that you'll see reflected is that you want to keep the pot a little bit smaller from out of position. But I would definitely go probably at least 3x here in this spot. I don't think it's a terrible thing.
If I go 2.5, I'm playing it 3 ways. For sure.
Right. So you 4-bet to 240. Okay.
Yeah, the original raiser, the action player, he folds. I mean, pretty quickly. And the Button calls pretty quickly. Now, it's important to note that this is a 4-bet pot, so now that the betting is capped. So the dealer announces capped. But you can also get a pretty good read in this game if a guy, has to call kind of feeling, or if he just, I'm going to call because I'm calling. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a guy that has aces and can't raise and a guy that's just going to call with everything he 3-bets. You know what I mean?
Because he can't 5-bet you. So he cannot. He cannot. So it's not like, okay, so that's the little quirk here, right? So
yeah, and I can tell you that my live read is that it wasn't as strong like I have aces or kings I have to call. I didn't feel like that when I watched him call. But it could be off, of course.
So 240 is 480. So it's like what, 500 in the pot or something like that?
About 505, something like that, yeah.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, we get the queen jack 10 flop with 2 spades, queen and 10 of spades. I have the jack of spades.
So this is interesting. Queen Jack 10. I'm gonna put the Jack of Hearts.
You
And you
want
have,
Jack of Hearts?
yeah, and you have the Jack of Spades. So you have Jack of Spades, Jack of Clubs. So it comes out Queen 10 Jack, right? So obviously we've got Ace King here represented. You have middle set, and it could be the guy could there's a wide variety of obviously hands. I think that your four betting size pre though certainly condenses a fair amount of hands. What I find kind of interesting about this is that, and I've talked about this on the call-in show, I've talked about it in my podcast, is that you really are supposed to have, in theory, an extremely high c-betting frequency in four bet pots. Like almost every single board is supposed to be c-bet at like somewhat of a small sizing, or can be c-bet at somewhat of a small sizing, except like the boards that are just so crazy, like maybe like 9-10 Jack monotone or something like that. Here you've got Queen 10 Jack, which obviously is a connected board, and what's interesting here, because this is where I talk about where I think that the computer work is very helpful. Now, I didn't look at this, but it would be interesting if we went in and looked at this particular scenario, because I feel like with the pot being 505 and you guys having about maybe 1350 left, so maybe 2.5 to 3 pot size bets left, I feel like aces and kings would want to do a lot of checking here. So it's interesting how you would balance that with ace king and with obviously sets. Like, what would you think you would want to be doing here, Andrew, if you had aces and kings in
Yeah,
this scenario?
that was the quandary for me, was that I felt like, ace king, I mean, if I bet, it's going to be small because I want to get called by everything.
Uh-huh.
But I also feel like he can have aces or kings here, and he could be, obviously he's not going to fold that.
Right.
So all the hands, I mean, the hands that maybe shouldn't be there are still there. He's going to call with ace queen. He's going to call with, I don't know, probably any king, any like pocket nines, 10-9. There's a lot of hands that can still call with that. Any spades. So I feel like I can get called by a lot, but I also don't want to get raised. I don't think quite. I mean, I'm fine. I mean, obviously, I'm not worried about like if he has queens, I'm getting stacked. It's fine, but I don't think I'm folding this hand.
No, I don't think
something really
so.
weird happens.
I don't think you can.
But
Yeah,
I
you
also
can't.
don't think
You can't.
out is the best.
You can't really fold. You can't really fold because you could overset him. Yeah, he might overset you, and you also have equity against ace king, right? I mean, you have some equity against ace king. What the other thing too? That's
go ahead, Bart. No, I was going to say, I also think he has some bluffs, this guy. So he's not afraid to put in a bet with, if he had like 7-8 of spades or, ace 5 of spades, I think this guy would bet if I checked him.
Just another quick little tidbit that you said. And again, this all goes back to preflop and hand reading, is this like you said, oh, he'll call me with any king. And my question is that like when you cold 4-bet, to 240, what is any king here? Like, is any king jack suited, king 10 suited? Are those hands being defended here to a 4x cold 4-bet, like king queen suited?
I think king queen, king jack, king 10. I think there's a decent chance they're all being defended here. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would say it's a little bit on the wider side, but I mean, if you say the guy is action, I think I would probably default to just a small bet, maybe 150 to 160, because you're going to be able to get the money in, and you're supposed to be c-betting a lot of 4-bet pots, and you can have ace king. So it's kind of like a volume bet. It's almost like a range bet. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a range bet where you make it with your entire range here because it favors you like a lot. It's an interesting quirk that he doesn't get to 5-bet, so the ranges aren't so pegged down, like you said, right?
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you. Thinking about the hand, maybe betting like 175 is a good bet here.
I even think like 150, something like that.
Yeah. I checked, like you can probably tell by the way I'm talking. I did check, thinking that I can get value for some bluffs, and that he might bet his aces, his kings, any queen, obviously his sets. But I did check, and he did bet. He bet 225.
Wow, that's interesting. Button bets 225. I mean, here's the thing. The reason why I'm not a huge fan of checking is because if I put myself in your opponent's perspective, and obviously, we can outlevel ourselves, right? Sometimes we give our opponents too much credit, but, let's say you're a taggy player, Andrew, which I know you are, right? Like you're not going to have, I don't think you're going to have a ton of just pure airball, cold 4-bets here. Maybe, once in a while, like the ace 5 suited or something like that. But that's a very small sort of range. So that's a small portion, I feel like, of your range here. So when you check this board, I feel like you might have aces or kings, or you just smack the hell out of the board with like ace king of spades. You know what I mean? Like ace king of spades, where it's just like you're blocking a lot of the scare cards that come in on the turn. It's hard for him to have value because you have ace king of spades, and once in a while you're going to check as a slow play. So I don't think I'm going to just start firing mindlessly unless I have a plan where I'm like, I'm going to try to get Andrew off of aces here. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not usually a sound live plan to try to bluff somebody saying like squarely, oh, I'm going to have aces. So it's very interesting that he takes this sizing with you having, say, like Jack here. And it's also interesting too, the the size of the pot in relation to how much you have left. If you call, the pot's going to be 955 and you're going to have what, like 1100 left, something like that. Is that about right?
Something like that.
Yeah. I think
it's a 600 max bet too. So
right. I think that if you've checked here, then calling is probably fine. I just think I would be doing a lot of c betting. You can make it look like maybe you've got aces or something like that, right?
Yeah, I do think that this betting small is probably better than checking, because if we don't get the bet, it's kind of a disaster if he's got like a king or he's got some kind of equity that to beat us. So at least we can bet. And we can kind of make the pot bigger to value bet later. I do agree with you there, but I did do that. And I thought he did have some spaz in him too, so a little bit of spaz. So I thought there was some value in checking too.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously I'm not folding, so I call.
Mm-hmm. So now the pot is 955, I believe. 955.
Like that,
yeah. 450. Yeah.
The turn comes a blank. I don't know what it was. It was low. And it wasn't a heart or spade.
3 of clubs or something, right?
Yeah, let's just say that.
By the way, I need to tell another thing too that I feel like for a lot of people, especially watching this video. So, hand reading, a very, very strong part of hand reading, and I've talked to many, many people about this. A mutual friend of ours, a lady, too, Andrew, a very strong poker player. A very strong part of hand reading is hand recall, and hand recall being where you remember hands correctly so that you can, basically, correctly analyze, hands after the fact. However, this is interesting what you said, because there are certain situations where a blank card is irrelevant, meaning that it's okay for Andrew to say the turn's a low blank and it's irrelevant, because it is irrelevant here. Like a 3x, a deuce x, a 4x, or a 5x are all irrelevant to the hand. So, it's interesting the way that our memory works, because there really isn't a point in remembering what the specific turn card was besides the fact that it was a blank. Now, what people will end up doing, though, especially because I see so many hand submissions, is people will think certain cards are blanks when they're not. Like, let's say the board is like Jack 10 5, or excuse me, like let's say the board is like Jack 10 5 4, right? Front door and back door flushes, like on the turn, and then somebody on the river says, "Oh, the river's a blank." On Jack 10 4 5 2 flush, both sides, river's a blank, and I'm like, there are no blanks on that board. On Jack 10 4 5, there's no blanks on the river. It's going to be a nut changing, right? Here, this card is a blank. I also think it's interesting to note that they used to go, especially with this Netflix show about chess, The Queen's Gambit. I watched it. I'm not a great chess player. I don't know the openings, but I dabble. Chess players are like good poker players in that they can remember matches they've played from many, many years ago in certain situations where there might be 30 or 35 moves into the match, and they can remember it down to a T. But I remember reading an article where they gave these chess players with these amazing memories an entirely random board scenario that would make no sense. That's impossible to actually have play out on the chessboard, like maybe a bunch of pawns and stuff, like by the last file or something like that, and just nonsensical positions. And they couldn't remember. It's not like they could go to the chessboard and remember those positions. They couldn't remember those positions, but they could remember logical positions, and they could remember matches from 20 years ago. And that's kind of like how you want to think about yourself too, as like a poker hand reader. Like, I can remember poker hands a lot of times for years and years and years, but I can't necessarily remember somebody's name. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I'll remember
I'm
some.
the same way, Bart. I'm the same way in that if I've experienced it, it's so more vivid to me because I can picture what seat I was in. I can picture exactly everything else but the hand, but I can't always picture who the person was or
Mhm.
exactly. But I can tell
Right.
you kind of the feel of what chips I bet with, and I have like a visual memory like that as far
Well,
as
I mean,
remembering that
that's
stuff.
how
But
everybody's memory. I mean, I think that's how everybody's memories work. I also can remember if somebody tells me what city they're from. Usually, that will be more memorable than a name. But anyways, all right, I'm gonna put the turn up as the three of clubs. Okay.
okay,
Yep.
okay. Well, I mean, I don't think I should be betting out now. I mean, I guess I could. It'd be a weird line, but I think it just screams ace king if I lead out, honestly. And there is some, and I thought I was going to check it back, honestly, but I did check again. I don't know how
Well,
you
what
feel
I
about
mean, what?
that. I
How can
figured,
you can't check? I mean, I don't think you can check call and lead. I mean,
yeah,
that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. You know what I mean? I
it
mean, you
doesn't
have
really at
to.
all.
Yeah, yeah.
So I check, and he
Uh,
bets 400,
so
and
button bets 400. So
you
this
know,
is where we're going to get into this threshold scenario here. So if you were to call, the pot would be 1735, but you've already put in 500, so it would be 1735 and you'd have like 700 left, right? So something like
yeah.
that.
What I thought was weird was that, like, I mean, maybe he doesn't know this. This guy might be from out of town, but like, he can't even bet 600 on the river to get all in. The guy. So if he had ace king,
Hmm.
wouldn't he bet enough to make able to shove? You know what I mean? He bet an amount that didn't allow him to shove 600. I just didn't feel like he was that strong, based on the way this hand went down.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, and this is another thing that I've kind of noticed from watching some of the Negreanu Doug Polk match here too, sometimes with some of these interesting heads up scenarios. So he bets 400 and 955. So it means if you call, the pot's going to be, 1755, and it looks like you're going to have maybe like 7 to 800 left. So just over a half pot size bet left, I think, right? You put in 240, 500, 900, so you'd have about 700 left. There actually are, in theory, hands where you could just go check, call, check, call. I mean, I definitely don't think there's anything wrong with check jamming here just to get it in because you're very, very close to that sort of stack threshold. But if you do think that you have enough left where there's a possibility that your opponent could run a bluff on you, meaning that like at least there appears to be like there's some fold equity. Like if you have at least, I would say maybe 33% of the pot left, right? Which I think you do here. Then you might
Yeah,
want
it's
to
close.
take this into a check call, just check call line, like across like, for, those types of, that type of thing to have, a quote unquote strong hand to
Co-
check call with. The problem here, of course, is you're going to get a lot of messy rivers here too. And the pot is large, right?
Yeah, a couple things about that. First of all, the 600 max bet makes it less likely a guy is going to
Oh,
bluff
that's true. Oh,
all
because
of
he
it
can't.
off.
Oh, that's right.
So
Because he can't
he
go
can't
all in.
shove. So,
Right.
so I'm going to get a better price in the river. He
Yeah.
knows that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that basically, I think guys are more or less likely to barrel with nothing. They might barrel flop and turn, but a lot of guys give up. You
Sure.
know,
No, absolutely. No, but you bring up
and the
a.
fact that there is some equity for whoever he has. If he has like pocket nines, let's say, and he just is just or 10-9, he's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Or a king,
you
we
bring
want value from that hand.
you bring up a good point that obviously I wouldn't have thought of, is that he can't, because he can't move all in, right? There is no polarization at the end. Like you take away this guy's ability to bluff, because if you call, the pot's going to be 1755. He can only bet 600 on the river, right? He
Yeah,
can't move all in for 1,000, right?
yeah,
So
whatever it is, yeah.
but you can make it 1,000. Is that how it goes here? You can check raise
Yes,
to 1,000.
exactly. I mean, 1,000 and it'd be like 200 more after that.
Okay.
If I wanted to,
I
you
think
know.
that I mean, I would think that you'd probably just get it in here. It's interesting because people would be like, well, he's got all the ace kings, so that's 16 combos. And then he's got 3 combos of queens, that's 19. And then he only has 3 combos of 10. So are you ahead here? Does he have enough bluffs? If you were to say, just treat this basically kind of like an all in, like you're just going to
Yeah, I
get it
kind of,
in. So
yeah,
it's like you're
resigned
almost
myself.
getting
I
like 2
said
to
I wasn't
1.
going to fold
Right. Well, yeah. No, I mean,
unless
you're
something
almost
weird
getting like
happened.
2 to 1. Like, even though he's betting 400 and 955, like, you really only have like 1,100. So we can kind of treat it as an all in. He's actually a slightly over bet all in. So, do you have slightly, 1.8 to 1, which would probably be what, 35 to 36% equity here? And then, of course, you got to factor in, though, too, is that like, if he's just bluffing, are you always going to get called, if you check jam. It's a weird little, it's a very interesting scenario here. I don't think that check jamming here with a middle set and a 4-bet pot can ever be that bad, but it is kind of interesting. So you check raised.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also I noticed he was wearing dark clothing, so I can randomize that way too.
Yeah, right. So what ended up happening? You check raised to 1,000.
So I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
I made it 1,000, and he kind of folded relatively quickly. He thought about it for maybe 30 seconds, and he's like, "Oh, you got the nuts, and he just kind of. But I don't think he had much, honestly. That's just I guess he would probably fold a queen, like ace queen there too. He would fold.
So the reason why, again, the reason why I wonder, that little wrinkle of the 600, not being able to bluff the river for 600 adds a wrinkle to this, but the fact that he was just bluffing now kind of makes me want to call across and play this hand like as a check call. I'm not trying to be results oriented. I go back to this whole board distribution of queen 10, jack 3. And yes, we don't have a 5-bet, so, but there's a lot of ace kings. There's a lot of pocket queens. Maybe he could have 8-9 suited once in a while. So you can't just look at it like it's an all-in because he might not call your check raise, which is exactly what happened here. So I wonder if the line might be to just go check call, but you got to basically close your eyes on some rivers and call, right? Because there might be some very scary rivers.
It felt flawed, honestly. The plan was to check, and then I just realized how big the pot had got, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
whatever he's got, if he's got any kind of equity, he's going to call. And if he's got a better hand, I'm not folding anyway. So it kind of was my thought. I don't know if it's the right thinking, but I just thought the pot was getting pretty darn big, and there are some cards that can maybe kill my action if I was ahead.
Right.
So that was my thought.
Trying to get some value,
I don't think it was terrible. I just didn't think it was like a slam dunk. It was a very awkward spot, to say the least.
Yeah, I might take this one as a check call. Like I said, you're going to see some really, really crazy rivers once in a while if you take this line like the 9 of spades, and you're like, fuck.
So I would think. I was thinking about other hands I might have in this spot, like queens. How would I play that? How would I play ace king? How would I play like ace king suited or spades maybe? How would I play? I was thinking of all different hands I could have in this spot,
right?
And how I would play them. And I feel like it was kind of flawed in that regard. I would probably bet with a lot of them, from the start.
Well, that's again, and also too, like if you had like ace 5 here, even with absolutely no equity whatsoever. Well, you do have a little bit of equity, right? A gut shot to a king. The board, it just favors you so much that I feel like, again, in 4-bet pots, you c-bet, a lot. So I just think that you probably should be c-betting basically your entire range here, I would think, including even some of your ace 5 bluffs too.
I feel like I would bet ace 5 of spades and ace 5 of hearts maybe. And I feel like that, but maybe I would bet all of them small.
No, it
was interesting. Obviously, knowing he could have aces and kings was one reason why I checked.
Right.
And maybe it isn't the right reason, but I thought it was interesting regardless.
Knowing that he might have aces and kings is why you checked. You mean to let him think that he's got the best hand? You mean?
Yes, exactly.
Because there's the cap preflop. No, that's interesting.
Yes.
Let me just ask you. So I appreciate the hand, Andrew. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.